Good to go. Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Set in Education. It's Friday, March 24th. A couple minutes after 1 o'clock. I apologize for those watching, a little bit of a late start, as well as to our witnesses. We're going to start the conversation today with sort of a touch base, if you will, on mental health in our schools. Kathleen, I see you up there. Glad you're here. Thank you. And I see Scott and Jeff also. Glad you're all here. Really appreciate your willingness. This is as you can tell, a small committee. There are 5 of us. There are 3 of us here. 1 is on his way and 1 is out this week. But welcome to Senate Education. What we thought we would do is spend a little time just hearing, and Kathleen, if you want to start the conversation a little bit around telling us, what you're seeing, what kinds of things are happening, and are there ways that you're thinking of that we could possibly be helpful? But there are also, we'll start asking questions. We'll have a bit of a conversation. But with that, I'll turn it over to you, and then you can have Scott and Jeff jump in as you'd like.
Great, thank you so much. But first, I wanted to thank you for this opportunity. So thank you for having us here, for taking the time to hearing us. I think there's 3 major concerns that we would like to address today, and that is the uptick in mental health among school-age children, the stress of the workforce, and that Jeff and Scott will be speaking to that, and resources. And we would like to be solution-based as well. So we have a model that we would like to present. It's just an idea, and Jeff is going to share that.
Great.
So what we're seeing, so I'm going to touch briefly on the uptick of mental health, and clearly there's an increase among school-age children. And I want to be clear that this is not misbehavior. This has to do with significant everyday mental health challenges. And again, this is every day. So I have an extensive list here of what that, because I want to paint a picture of what that will look like, but I won't go through my whole entire list. So, but there's some things are suicidal ideations, self-harm, lack of empathy, social deficiencies, and dysregulation. We have students that are so dysregulated and so distressed that they are not available to learn.
And Kathleen, just for a moment, just let the committee know you're at an elementary school. So this is elementary school, Shasbury Elementary. It's K through 5.
So yeah, and I apologize, I messed up on our agenda.
No, that's okay.
I wanted to do some introduction. Sorry about that.
No problem at all.
Right down to business, right? So I'm Kathy Semyanek, and I'm the school counselor at Shasbury Elementary School, and we are a K through 6 school.
6, okay.
And I'll let Scott and Jeff introduce themselves.
Hi there. I'm Scott Berg. I also want to just thank you for having us to talk about this really important issue. I'm a child psychologist, and I've been working under contract with the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union for about 8 years. I provide direct clinical services to some of our most at-risk and in-need learners. I also work under a few title grants from the U.S. Department of Education to do consulting and professional development to try to help shift our educational practices and culture towards a more compassionate, connected, and trauma-informed approach. Jeff?
I too want to thank the committee for including this in this really important conversation. I was kind of excited when Kathy brought this to us and said, Brian Campion might want to talk with us about this. So again, I thank you for that. I'm principal here at Shasbury Elementary. I've been in this district for 25 years, in this position for 10 years. So I think I have quite a bit of experience in these students and some of the things that we've been seeing. And I'm looking forward to sharing what we're observing and what we're dealing with from a day-to-day basis with you all.
Great. Back to you,
Okay.
Kathy.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So we were kind of discussing like what we see on an everyday basis. So this is every day. And with some of these students, they exhibit these behaviors, but also many others, not just once. It can be up to 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day, if not all day. And co-regulation. I mean, they need co-regulation. And, we don't have the support system to provide that, but we're going to talk about that in a little. Scott's going to touch base on that. So we have this uptick in mental health among these school-age children, but also we're dealing with the interruption of development. And
Kathy, we have the first question. Co-regulation. Would you tell us something about that? What that is?
So if a student is dysregulated, they really need somebody there to get them regulated. So you co-regulate. It can be breathing. It can be just sitting in silence. It can be whatever works for that particular student. And sometimes that can take a long time. Sometimes it can be 15 minutes, but sometimes it can be a couple hours to get them back into a state where they can somewhat function throughout the day. And again, we're seeing such an increase in that. Just functioning in the school environment is so challenging. It is so challenging for students. So, and so like this kind of piggybacks this, like, so an interruption in development, we're clearly seeing an interruption of development. So we have students that are coming in that are not school ready. They're lacking the skills that it takes to kind of function throughout the school day. And this we saw prior to COVID, but COVID definitely amplified this. So and also in addition to, I think I want to include that we're also seeing, the drug crisis. We're seeing an impact in that. I kind of went through our student body and I was able to identify 27 students that are significantly impacted by the drug crisis. But those are the only ones that we know about. I mean, there could be more that we don't know about.
And that's in a school of how many students?
Are we 210?
We're close to, we're almost 220.
220.
Yeah.
Yeah. And significantly impacted. So with that being said, I don't know if I was going to kind of pass the baton to Jeff. I think I have my points unless there's any questions.
I think we'll go to Jeff and then we'll open up for questions. I don't know if Scott's going to want to say something. We have until about 1:30, so we're good.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
So Kathy set the stage really well for kind of the things that we're seeing here. And one of the things that we're really good at this district is keeping data. And we keep track of our students academically, social, emotionally, behaviorally. So we have a lot of tools in place so we can kind of watch things over the years. And when I heard that we were going to talk with you today, I decided to pull some data and kind of look at things and see what it looked like from roughly fall 2020 to this past fall 2022. And when Kathy talked about dysregulation, really what that means is when a student is they give maybe a non-typical emotional response to an activity or a direction from a teacher, whatever, where a normal student would be able to handle a direction or whatever. A dysregulated student can't do that. Their response may be to blow up. It may be to walk out of class. It may be to toss a chair, unfortunately, sometimes. So that's what dysregulated means. And when we look at what may cause that dysregulation, we look at two things. One is internalizing behaviors and one's externalizing behaviors. And the externalizing behaviors tend to be the ones that are really prominent in your face. They're the kids that are very physically aggressive or physically aggressive with furniture. They may be bursting out of class. They may be being very defiant with teachers or other kiddos. The internalizing behaviors are a little tougher sometimes. Sometimes honestly, sometimes they slip through the cracks because they're not as evident, where a student might be anxious but not really showing it, or they might be very shy or withdrawn. But we track all these behaviors pretty regularly. About 3 times a year, we benchmark, and the teachers look at all these behaviors with their students. So we have some data over the years to look at that. And what I saw when I looked at the data was our internalizing behaviors are up 40% between fall of 20 and fall of 22. And our externalizing behaviors are up 45%. Now, what that really means is it's more kiddos that are very dysregulated for whatever reason. We also do a thing called, we have a Swiss program, which does our office referral data. So, when these students are dysregulated and we see some of these behaviors, they turn into, a discipline referral to myself or the assistant principal, and we take steps from there. And again, we've tracked that over several years, and that data has blown up over the last few years. We've been taking it now for 5 or 6 years, and but this year in particular, I'm already 47% higher than I was a year ago, and we still have a couple more months in the school year to go. What I'm seeing a lot of is a lot of elopement, where students are just so dysregulated they just walk out of class and they decide they're not going to be in class anymore, and they don't ask permission, they just leave. And that's happened quite a few times, as well as defiance. I will say physical aggression is not up as much as the other two, but what I'm seeing is, excuse my doorbell there. What I am seeing is more aggressive, more severe physical aggression within the school and some of these students. It's just been, like I said, I've been here 10 years, so I've seen, and I've been in the district for 25. And I did have my first position here was as a paraprofessional that worked with these students in particular. So I've seen a lot of behaviors. The aggression has definitely been more aggressive and more severe the last few years, where we've had to call in family support services, and a number of different agencies to help out because it's been that way. So I don't know if you have any questions. I'm going to pass out to Scott if you guys don't have any questions for me.
Well, what's interesting is, and we've had other testimony from other schools. What I'm grateful for is there's consistency at Shaftesbury Elementary. One of the things we are hearing is that there's been a huge turnover. I mean, we know that we have in the leadership of the schools, principals. So, it's great that you're there, and that consistency. I hope you realize, your colleagues realize how important it is to the success of the school. It's a big deal. And I guess one of the things, and maybe Scott can get into this, is then when students do walk out of class, when there is an issue, how is it handled? What kinds of things then go into place? I know the supervisory union is creating a space. I know they're taking the old offices and building a place where some kids that might need an alternative program can kind of go. But I don't know the details of that. So Scott, I don't know if you can tell us a little bit about your work and what you're seeing.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And I just wanted to thank Jeff and Kathy. I have they're both wonderful colleagues, and Jeff is a great school leader. I have the sort of the perspective of working in several elementary schools in the SVSU. So I have the opportunity to sort of see this through, bring my lens to slightly different environments. And I will say that, I believe Shaftesbury, it's relatively well resourced. We've got a great leadership. We've got a lot of really talented and caring educators. And we are seeing these challenges in the community at this school, at this level, which is really concerning. And the level of these, episodes of dysregulation and distress in both students and staff is actually worse in some of our students that have more challenging populations. So just really quickly, I just want to sort of explain or just make sure we're all on the same page about understanding, because we've been, I think all of us, referring to this idea of dysregulation. And it's not just, I think Kathy mentioned this in the beginning, it's not just sort of, kids being bad or, sort of like bad behavior. but it is a real disruption to the nervous system and to the healthy development of the nervous system in these kids. And usually we see this when kids grow up in environments with a lot of stress, unpredictability, and you know, these home environments, kids are naturally resilient. So even with challenges in the home environment, if we have protective factors in their lives, if we have strong community, if we have connection to trusted adults, if we have spaces in their lives where they can feel empowered, feel competent, feel safe, feel connected, that can ameliorate these challenges. And this is actually where we have a beautiful opportunity as educators in these buildings to create a safe space for students where neurotypical development can happen, where those kind of attachment relationships that support healthy development can happen. The problem is that as more students show up dysregulated, and dysregulation is really this, like I said, this maladaptive response of the nervous system, where it's heightened anxiety, it's physical discomfort, it's a loss of critical thinking. So when this happens, the part of the brain responsible for learning, for planning, thinking, impulse control, all of these higher order brain functions shuts down. And I don't mean sort of figuratively, I mean literally gets bypassed in the brain. And so we cannot teach these kids. You can have the best educators in the world. You can have the teacher of the year in every classroom. You can try and work so hard, and it doesn't matter because they cannot encode these memories. They cannot focus. They don't have the capacity to be available for learning. So until we manage this, we really can't even talk about how we're going to educate the next generation of kids. And this seems to be, as you can hear from Jeff's data, this is really a looming crisis. The good thing, because I said there's a beautiful piece of this, and that is that children's brains are incredibly plastic. So these dysfunctions that form in the brain, and they're actually structural, they are not permanent. This is not a, we are not doomed. But we need to create these environments where they have the kind of support and stability, where that kind of neurally maladaptive development gets sort of redirected into a place of healthy development. And we have that opportunity. This is imminently doable if we can provide the resources and the framework that we need in our schools to support the mental health needs of our kids. So I just want to quickly say, before I think I'm going to pass this back to Jeff, I wanted to just say that I envision sort of the root of our problem as a cycle of dysregulation and distress. So what is happening, as I see it, is the kiddos are showing up dysregulated. Due to the increases in that, the fact that our teachers are not really mentally health trained, although we've been doing some really lovely training in being trauma sensitive and informed, and and thinking about this from that through that lens. But when the kids show up that way, and the staff, our staff is caring and supportive and excellent at what they do, but they get overwhelmed. And they're not getting the results they want because the children are not available to learn, and because there's all of these externalizing behaviors that Jeff described. And what happens is they get stressed. Now, as they get stressed, and a big piece of this is that we don't have the necessary resources in either human resources or financial resources to provide for these mental health needs. This scale of this problem is relatively new in our schools. Yeah. And so we don't have a commensurate response right now. Mm-hmm. Due to that, we have this heightening of distress in the adults. And once that happens, those adults who are the ones who are supposed to create those trusted relationships with the students, create a safe community in classrooms, those adults are no longer available to provide that level of comfort and connection for the kids. That makes the kids more dysregulated. Guess what happens then? Stresses the adults out more, the adults are in more distress, the kids are in more distress, and this goes on and on. So we need to intervene in that, to be able to get our kids to where they are happy and able to learn in our schools. And I'm going to, because this is really involves a sort of a staffing issue too, and this involves, the wellness of our staff, and that's an important piece of this, as I just described. So I'm going to pass this back to Jeff.
Yeah, and I'll just mention some of the things that we have, pass over to you, Jeff, that we have heard from some schools is there's a big concern that when the federal funds dry up, which is 2025, that's going to really put a lot of schools in a tricky, even a harder position than they are right now. A lot of schools feel as though there's some resources there for them to do some creative things, some different things. But coming from the other angle is this workforce shortage. So some places have these dollars. A lot of schools have more dollars than they've had historically for a long time. But no matter what the dollars they have, we're not able to compete with other states sometimes. Somebody like Scott might go to another area where he can make more. Any of you could go probably to another area where you can make more. So it's those kinds of things coming together, or I suspect you're seeing a little bit as well, Jeff.
Yeah, so Scott, good segue into my section. So I like I said, I've been here 10 years. I think I know my staff pretty well. I have a pretty good relationship with many of my teachers, and I've heard it ever since COVID. How stressed they are and how overwhelmed they are more than they ever have been. I see it in daily interactions with them and daily meetings I have with them and what they're telling me, what they're seeing, what they're hearing. I can tell you there's some teachers that struggle to get through a lesson without a disruption. The first instruction that students need to get, and they can't get through that whole lesson without a disruption or two from a student, which, they're proud people and they want to do a really good job for their students. And when that doesn't happen and they don't feel like they're doing a good job because of this dysregulation, they take it to heart and it becomes stressful for them. I don't have any hard data on it, but just going by my observations, I'm certain that a lot of absences we've had are teachers saying, I need a mental health day. I need to take a day because I need to reset myself. So I'm in a good spot, like Scott says, to help these students. To talk about the employee pool, my first year here, I remember it, my first position I posted, I got 30 to 40 applicants for a teaching position, second grade. I remember it clearly. Last year when I posted, I was lucky to get 5 applicants. And I'll tell you, out of the 5, 2 of them, I wouldn't even interview because they had no credentials whatsoever. They were just somebody that applied for the job, but really I couldn't hire them. They were hireable. So it really left me with about 3 people to go with. So the pool is very small. We've more so in the last couple of years, obviously, the district as a whole and here at Shasbury, we've had to focus on staff wellness and bring in more, either Scott helping out with staff wellness. We have a health and fitness coach here in the district now that ESSER funds are paying for, that's helping with staff wellness. We have an art therapist that both works with students as well as helps out with staffing, that's ESSER funded, that's helping with staff wellness. Myself and my assistant principal, Sarah Case, have made a focus this year to try to promote staff wellness. And, if they need something, what can they do that's good for them and good for their mental health, and offering resources for them has become more and more of a push for us this year. So Scott's correct. It has an effect. We're humans as well. My day starts off with checking it. I feel like a doctor in the morning that does rounds, and I have a list of kids that I have to check in with every morning and see how they're doing and try to get them in a good place so they can enter the classroom and hopefully have a good morning. And I do that every single morning, and then every afternoon I check in with those kids again. And it's not just me, there's other staff members that are doing that as well. So those are things that we do to try to get those kids in a good place so that they're able to function in the classroom.
Could I just say something really quick? This also just the secondary trauma that the other children are being exposed to as well. I just wanted to make sure that that's in there somewhere. So we do have students that come ready to learn, but they're being exposed to these situations, and so secondary trauma is happening with them. So sorry.
No, it's helpful. It's a real cycle. I mean,
It's a real cycle. Yeah.
Scott described.
Mhm.
So when you're thinking about, I'm sorry, Senator Williams, please.
So you think it's a generational thing? Are we building children on top of parents that have problems similar to what the children have had? That's what I'm hearing. And
Yeah,
there's drug problems, there's behavior problems at home, maybe that, and I don't know, I hear it from other schools too. I've been visiting a lot of them. So you're not alone, but how do we fix it? If that's where the root cause is, how do you get to fix that problem?
I absolutely agree with that. And I think that's why this is such an important pressure point for us to look at as far as where we can be effective, because we know that there is generational trauma. We know that, unstable or dysfunctional families don't provide environments where children can thrive, or often don't. But this is where we have a real opportunity, because we can create an environment, a safe bubble in the school that supports the kind of learning and development that they need. And it doesn't take that much. It takes consistent relationships with trusted adults. It takes a sense of safety and community and connection. And that seems like something we should be able to do. We have, I've been working in a couple of schools with models that are sort of more comprehensive. One school, we've finished the process, and that's been incredibly successful. But it's basically a more comprehensive approach to how we treat student mental health, instead of doing a sort of piecemeal Band-Aid approach, which is kind of how a lot of schools are handling it right now.
Senator Hashim.
Yeah, just a comment to your point, Senator. I think when it comes to the generational piece of it, I agree with that. It's something on my former line of work. It's what I used to see. You see it for 3 generations, hear the stories, and also have the interactions. But I also think there's a lot of other elements too. We're coming out of COVID. We're our economy in this current situation. I mean, I have a 12-year-old, and it's a lot of people in their mid-30s. When they're thinking about having kids, or if they have kids, there's just a lot of fear and anxiety about what our futures are going to look like. And, as parents try to mask that as best as they can, it still gets transferred. The kids can pick up on that, and it affects them. I'm no psychologist, but just from my personal experiences and with other people that I know. So, yeah, just my 2 cents.
And I think social media plays a piece as well. We have these kids that are not there. They are exposed to all kinds of information that developmentally they are just not ready for.
Right, Senator Williams.
So if you were king for a day or queen for a day, what would you do if you could do one thing that would start the process to repair it?
I'm glad
this
you
will
asked.
need
That's a great segue.
Yes.
That's a
Go
great
right
segue. So, Scott and Kathy and I always talked a few times about this, and this kind of, so we're having this conversation. You guys recognize this is important. This is something that needs to be addressed. We work in it every day. We see it every day for 180 days a year, and we work with these families and these students. And so I'm going to do an analogy for you. So I'm a principal of a school over 220 kids and over 40 staff. I have a building that I have to take care of as far as and as well as take care of those bodies in here. So when there's a building problem, I have somebody in my central office to call, or I call my maintenance guy, and they call somebody at central office. They say, get a hold of, it happens to be Holly. And I say, get a hold of Holly. We have a leaky roof. We need to get it fixed. If I have a financing issue, I have somebody at central office to contact. It's Renee. And I say, Renee, what do we do here? Or she has some staff under her that helps me with that. Same thing with student services. We have Kate Abbott and her associate directors under her, that if I can't answer a question about special ed, they can help me with that. This is that important that I think there needs to be a central office person role that manages a clinician like Scott in every building that we have access to, that these students have access to. Kathy had a great analogy we were talking about earlier this morning. She sees a lot of kids. She does a great job and sees a lot of students. It's the top tier students that are really struggling, that are showing some severe mental health issues that she can't, not that she's not able, but that she can't deal with because she's got her own caseload. And kids that Scott sees that he's only here for a day and a half a week need more than a day and a half a week. They need Scott here every day so that he can help them regulate and help them work through some of their things they're working through so they can manage. So that's the kind of the model, I guess, an idea we're proposing is, a central office staff member that oversees somebody in every school that helps with mental health of our students and our staff really too. But, our students are why we're here. And so if I was competing for the day, I would create that position and those roles and try to find people to fill those.
And that person, Jeff, you're saying would oversee the Scots, if you will, making sure Scots in every school and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I would, if I can just add one thing there, in addition to that, as like really having a comprehensive approach to the systems, the protocol, as far as how we are handling mental health needs as part of that. So once we are appropriately structured and staffed, the whole population of staff receiving the right training to really understand what's going on with these kiddos and know best practices for managing it. We've done some of that. We could do more. And tying that into really letting people know in practice, how do we handle these behaviors? How do we utilize this structure and these clinicians or these individuals who are responsible for the mental health needs, both in schools and at the district level.
I want to end with one more thing. I don't want to sound like our district is doing some great things here. And they're doing the best they can with what we have. They've got us in our therapists. They've got us people like Scott. We have a behavior specialist now at our school. We've done some trauma training with our staff several times. So our district is doing to try to do some things here. It's not like they're not trying. It's just the resources, full resources aren't there that I feel we need.
It's very helpful to know that, and I'm sure, we're not an anomaly in the Southwest. I'm sure there are others that, again, would recognize this sort of complementary approach, having this staff person at central office, and again, generally using, getting more mental health resources on the ground. And, what I can promise you is we'll continue to have this conversation and talk to our colleagues in appropriations to see what might be coming out from their side. I do worry in 2 years, all this stuff, all the great stuff that's being done with these ESSER funds, it is going to be really hard to transition. Now, some of those things will appear, I'm sure, in all of our local budgets, but if folks start voting down those local budgets, that's going to be, it's just going to exacerbate the problem. Senator Williams, please.
Right, just want this presentation to the Health and Welfare Committee too. Although there's 3 of us in here that are on that committee, but it is a health and welfare issue.
Yes.
Sure is.
Sometimes you get a couple committees agreeing that it's a good thing, but it's got to start with you all.
Yeah.
Because we can't be there to see it, you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so helpful to hear from you today. And I will talk to the chair of Senate Health and Welfare and see if there's something that we can do to partner around these issues. It'd also be great for me to get up to Shasbury Elementary School actually in the next few weeks. It would be really good.
Welcome anytime, Brian.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely.
It's been very helpful. Any final questions or comments at this point?
I would just say if there's any way that we can help as far as informing other committees or other legislative members, I think I can speak for all of us, more than happy to help. This is really important work.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Kathy, I think it was your mother that put us in contact, right?
So Yes, yes, it was.
Yeah.
My 82-year-old mother, she's a retired teacher, and she recognized a lot of, you know, a lot of the challenges that we're having. And I think you went on a walk with her. Is that
That's
right?
That's right. That's right.
Or should I say run? You probably went on a run with her.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, tell her I said hello.
I will
Jeff,
do that.
Say hi to Bonnie for me.
Say again?
Say hi to Bonnie.
I will.
And Scott, would it be safe to say hi to Leslie or no?
You could. You
That's
know my mom, huh?
what I thought. All right. Good. All right, thanks, everybody. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much.
much.
Thank
Thanks,
you for
everyone.
having us.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Great. Tutorial Center. Table. Who's gonna speak for you?
Well, we,
Kravitz or Ms. Faust?
both of us.
Okay, why don't you both come up?
And is Sean Marie joining us on
Yeah,
that?
she's joining
Yes.
us.
Okay, great.
There she is. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Terrific.
And do you have a copy of our?
We do, in our files, we have a number of different things.
So the presentation.
The presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So we've asked you, and you've asked us to come in, now that crossover is over, the Senate Appropriations Committee is working on its budget. We've heard so far, I believe, budget requests only from the Governor's Institute. It's been one group that's been in, and now we're happy to hear from you. The process usually is, of course, you'll have time in front of Senate Appropriations, I suspect, but Senate Appropriations will look for our recommendations and guidance as well. So with that, Jean Marie or Brian or Michelle, I'm not sure who's,
I'll go first.
okay, there you go. And we have about 20 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll tag team.
Great.
I am Michelle Faust. I am a resident of Irisburg, and I am the Executive Director of Northeast Kingdom Learning Services, also known as NEKLS.
And I'm Brian Kravitz, a resident of Waterbury, and I'm Development and Outreach Director at Central Vermont Adult Basic Education.
Great.
Hello, and I am Sean Marie Oler, a resident of Bennington and the Executive Director of the Tutorial Center. Thank you, Brian and senators, for allowing us to come before you and give us this opportunity to present today on behalf of all of the Vermont adult education and literacy providers in regards to our request for additional base funding of $1.5 million. Next slide.
So I'm just going to
Yeah,
refer to
perfect.
this slide here.
Thank you.
So our network is comprised of the 4 adult education and literacy providers in the state, which includes Central Vermont Adult Basic Education in green, Northeast Kingdom Learning Services in yellow, the Tutorial Center in pink, and Vermont Adult Learning in blue. As you can see, the AEL network providers cover the entire state, and we are able to serve students regardless of where they live in the state. Our request is for an additional $1.5 million and added to our current base. We have identified 5 cost categories that are in need of additional financial support. They include staffing, salaries, and benefits, technology needs, software upgrades, hardware, textbooks, supplies, and other instructional materials. Outreach and
Excuse me, what's that?
recruitment,
Send it,
So, adding to your base, what is your base?
about 3.5. In addition to outreach and recruitment, property maintenance, and services. It's important to note that the House included $700,000 in one-time funding for the Adult Education and Literacy Network in its 2023 budget. This is a little less than half of what we need moving forward. As it was a one-time, without a consistent increase, we will not be able to sustain the positive steps we took with the funding. A $1.5 million increase to our base will allow us to provide the high quality of education that our students need, providing basic education to our least skilled and least proficient adults in Vermont, giving Vermonters the opportunity to earn a high school diploma or GED, providing career and job readiness, and providing needed services to our English language learners is vital to Vermont's economic outlook. Next slide.
Like many organizations and employers in Vermont, the AEL network's operating costs have risen sharply and are expected to continue to do so. In spite of cutting back where we can, running very lean budgets and 2 one-time budget adjustments, all 4 of the providers are operating in deficits. We have not received substantial and sustainable increase to our base funding in almost 30 years. During COVID, like all schools, to meet the demands of online and blended learning, we had to quickly upgrade our technology and network systems, provide students with access to laptops and increased internet bandwidth. Unlike our public schools, we did not have access to funds for these upgrades. They were immediate responses and there's more work to be done. We need frequent upgrades, especially in academic settings, and just to stay ahead of the curve. Inflation has caused increases to supplies, heating, rents, and other costs of doing business. Due to the nature of our student bodies, those with disabilities, English language learners, and the most disenfranchised from education as a whole, it's imperative that we have highly trained teachers on staff. We've had to increase salaries to retain and hire new teachers. We're grateful for the budget adjustments of $350,000 in 2022 and $700,000 in 2023. However, those one-time funds haven't filled our needs. We've had to reduce expenses and we're as lean as we can possibly be. We need additional base funding added to the budget to fill vacancies, to hire additional staff, and as our student numbers are growing. We also need to increase wages to be able to attract and retain our teachers. As educators are leaving the profession due to pay and conditions, we must be able to remain competitive. We know that there are many more Vermonters who need our services, and we can't reach them without funding to support robust outreach and recruitment. With more students, the need for additional textbooks, supplies, and other instructional materials comes as well. Your support in providing our request for an additional $1.5 million to our base will ensure that we can adequately serve and reach more Vermonters now and in the future. It'll help them build assets they need to gain sustainable employment and become more active in Vermont's economic outlook. Next slide.
I just want to, I'm sorry to interrupt for a second, but I see the senators looking through the PowerPoint, and clearly the PowerPoint doesn't have everything we're saying. So we're happy to send what we put together to Hayden for you to refer back to, because all the information is not on what you're looking. They're just sort of a snapshot.
This is so, Senator Wiggins.
Which slide?
So we're on slide number 4. And so we are grateful for the one-time funding of $700,000 that we received in 2023 fiscal year. The Central Vermont Adult Basic Education, that's CVABE, is expecting a 31% increase in enrollment over 2 years. The additional funding allowed them to provide a much needed cost of living increase for staff, greatly helping to reduce the rate of high turnover and fill positions that had been vacant. Vermont Adult Learning, VAL, has served more students during the first half of FY23 than they have seen since before the pandemic. VAL continues to expand and improve their offerings through the online learning center. With the additional one-time funding, VAL was able to provide a cost of living increase, raise base rates for new staff. This helped greatly to reduce the high rate of staff turnover they were seeing and helped them to fill positions that had been empty for months. Northeast Kingdom Learning Center Services, NEKLS, last year experienced an increase in adult basic education level students of 50% over the prior year, and they are well on their way to an additional 20% increase above that in FY23. NEKLS was able to increase outreach to students, improve salaries for current staff, and hire new staff with competitive wages to fill those positions. At the Tutorial Center, we were able to buy new classroom computers and equipment to better teach remotely. Instructors and students needed access to tech programs and devices, as well as reliable technology in order to serve students who have many reasons for not being able to attend sessions in person. We have shown an exponential increase in ELL students. Most of these are Afghan students who have refugee status in Vermont. One-time funding increases help in the short term, and your action is needed just to maintain the current level of services that we offer. Next slide.
So the next slide is AEL findings.
Okay, thank you.
So the value of Vermont's adult education and literacy system is multifold. So The Commerce and Economic Development recognized last year by addition of these findings, which are on this slide, to S11, which was in Act 183. It's also important to note that unlike other nonprofits in Vermont, AEL has a statutory role in providing adult education and a path to a high school diploma or GED. AEL serve the most vulnerable Vermonters. Many of our students are in need of basic adult education as they have very low skills. There is no other Vermont program that offers a free path to high school credential for people age 16 and older. The state offers many tech programs and pathways to a better career, but many of our students lack the basic skills to participate successfully in these tech ed programs, free college programs, and workforce trainings. Adult ed and literacy is included in Title 16 education, Chapter 23, Subchapter 2, Flexible Pathways to Secondary School Completion, and includes the Flexible Pathways Initiative, High School Completion Program, and the Adult Diploma Program, General Education Development Program. If you turn to the next slide, you'll see that our work changes lives. Our work changes lives. Sarah, who's pictured on the left side of the slide, attended Vermont Adult Learning to earn her diploma. She continued her education with CCV and is now the owner of a thriving interior design business in Brattleboro. Val helped her meet life, academic, and career goals. Kiona, who is pictured on the right, started her education and literacy journey at the Tutorial Center in Bennington when she was 16 years old. She said that she felt hopeless for the future, but 3.5 years later, she is accomplishing goals she didn't think were possible. The Tutorial Center flexibility enabled her to work, get her driver's license, her first car, her first apartment, and earn a high school diploma. All of this while she was caring for a disabled family member. Students come to us at all skill levels, from no literacy or very low literacy, all the way through middle school and high school levels of literacy, much like a public school system would have a range of levels. We are now seeing many younger students from 16 to 20 who have rarely attended school over the last 3 years and have very low academic skills, need a great deal of individualized attention, and are coming to us with multiple barriers. We know that many, many more of these young adults are out there, and without intervention, within 3 to 5 years, they will become stressors on Vermont's economy. A robust and sustainable adult ed and literacy system will be their first and only stop for high school credentials, academic skills, and pathways to fill workforce needs. As a network, we serve, our students are 58% female, 22% BIPOC, though this varies from region to region. For example, at Val in Chittenden County, 40% of their students identify as non-white. 46% of our students have at least one disability, 53% are unemployed, and most are living in poverty, and 100% come to us with barriers to employment. 76% of students come to us with no high school credential. Some may take years to earn a credential, while others do so in short time. Over the last 5 years, 903 students earned a high school diploma and 209 earned a GED through the adult ed literacy system. Many of our students either joined the workforce or went on to post-secondary education, including college and job training. A number of our students received industry-recognized credentials. These Vermonters would likely never have been able to do so if not for the adult ed and literacy system and the services that we provide. Next slide, which is this one.
As Michelle mentioned, Vermont's AEL system is integral to the workforce development picture, and we do help to fill positions in high need sectors. On this slide, pictured is Pettigay, who is an immigrant from Jamaica. She dropped out of high school in 9th grade when she was pregnant. She ended up marrying someone, moving here. As a single parent, she worked menial jobs to provide for her daughter. She worked in housekeeping for years to put her daughter through college, and then a master's program. Her daughter is now a practicing mental health counselor in Vermont. She came to CBAD for both citizenship and English language learning, and she and her daughter became citizens on the same day. She then received her high school credential through the high school credential program, and as part of the program, she obtained her LNA license, and now she works doing what she loves at a a home. Her life has been transformed, and she credits AEL as being, she quote, a miracle. But we say it's really about her hard work. We're just there for her. Pettigay had goals for her family, her academics, and for her career. Through her determination and CBAB support, she was able to realize them. In her time at CBAB, she was in every program that AEL offers, from citizenship to high school credentialing. Every one of our students from across the state has a story with histories, goals, and pitfalls along the way. And so many like Pettigay have changed their lives through our programs. Last year alone, 21 AELN students earned industry recognized credentials. 23 entered post-secondary job training programs. Our work is helping to fill workforce needs, and the additional funding will allow us to continue this essential work. Next slide.
So the next slide looks like this. So between 2018 and 2022, AEL providers served over 10,000 Vermonters. Some of these students being served are over multiple years, each with their own goals, such as improving their skills in reading, writing, and math, obtaining a job or a better job, earning a high school diploma or a GED, achieving a certification or other credentials for employment, and attending college after discovering first that college was not only possible, but a desire for them. And now we have Vermonters, new Vermonters, looking to improve their English language abilities so they could become a contributing part of the Vermont workforce. Next slide.
Vermont's invested millions of dollars in job training programs and free college. Those with low literacy, low skills, or no high school credentials are unable to access those programs. Adult Ed and Literacy is the first stop on the ladder, and we're creating opportunities for the first Vermonters to obtain job credentials, take advantage of the free training programs, and like Pettigay, move into high-need sectors. Your support of this additional $1.5 million is an investment in our untapped labor market and will strengthen our economy. In a lot of ways, Vermont's AEL system across the state can be compared to a medium-sized Vermont school district. We serve around 2,000 students a year. Most are high need, as Michelle said. At CBABE, 60% of our students have at least one disability, and we're about 33% BIPOC. We operate under the guidance of the Agency of Education, and many of our programs are in statute. Our students range in reading and math levels from pre-K through high school with rapidly growing ELL populations. Close to 200 of our students a year obtain high school credentials. We do this at a fraction of the cost of our school systems. We ask that you support our request for the additional $1.5 million in base funding for the Adult Education and Literacy Network providers. The one-time funding we received in FY 22 and 23 was vital, but not sustainable. We would like to thank you again for your time and for listening to this presentation, for supporting Vermonters who need our services, and for supporting the Vermont Adult and Education Literacy Network. At this time, we're more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Something just pops up is, remind me, how do folks find you? How is it that people get to your doorstep?
That's a great question. So for many of our students, not all, they were lost to education.
Yeah.
And education is really, they may know they need us. They have to hear it. It's like a public service announcement. They have to hear it from 10, 15 sources that they trust. So sometimes, it's friends, it's neighbors, it's relatives. More importantly, it's from our partners in the state agencies. We partner with Department of Labor, with Higher Ability. We do outreach to the mental health agencies, to home health, you name it. All of those agencies that may have a case manager reach out, they have those trusting relationships. And what happens is they say, hey, maybe give those guys a call. They could really help you. And people are reticent. They don't want to. They're afraid. And finally, they will. They do. And that's really how people find us.
That's helpful. Senator Williams, and then Sean Murray.
So I'm meeting with Chris Satori Monday about it. Does he work with you guys?
He's Vermont Adult Learning.
Oh, okay.
That's not in your network.
No,
He's our network.
Yeah.
Our networks, so we only cover, represented here, including us, is everyone but Vermont Adult Learning.
okay.
So what's the connection then to Vermont Adult Learning as it relates to this appropriations request?
So we're all part of the same network.
You are.
We're the Adult Education and Literacy Network, which is the 4 providers, and we're divided by county, and it's through an RFP process.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Brian,
Yeah.
Hal, just so you know, Senator Hal was unable to be here. He had to take his wife to an appointment, and he apologizes because he knew that there were a Rutland and Val representatives there. And one of the things I wanted to add to the question, Brian, that you just asked is there's 14 counties and we cover all 14, as they just said, and it's broken up by a funding formula, you know, that each county gets a certain amount of dollars depending on a formula that was worked out in 1992. When we get the grant, after applying, if we get the grant, we sign a contract that we meet with the WIOA partners monthly. And those partners include all the people, I won't repeat what Brian said, but they include all the partners that Brian said, and it's part of our mandate to actually meet with them, and we exchange who might need different services. So that's another way that people hear from us. And the schools, at least certainly I can speak to Bennington, often refer a lot of students that drop out or that they send over to us to see if we might be a better fit.
Well, we were just on with Southwestern, our SVSU in Bennington. What age do you start with?
16.
16.
Out of school youth at age 16.
Okay, that's helpful. Other questions, Senator Weeks?
So in your presentation's very complete. You went through it pretty quick. Appreciate that. I know you're pressed for time. A lot of the demographic information you gave verbally. So it'd be helpful to have your testimony so you can kind of see those numbers.
Hayden already has it.
Okay, very good.
And we'll get you a medal that has it even more clearly by the different
So
providers.
my question really is information on the demographics. So the question that Senator Campion just asked about what age do you start at? Do you have anything that indicates that, you know, this is kind of the distribution of your clients, your students?
It's really different by provider. So for instance, at Central Vermont Adult Basic Ed, about 55% of our students are over the age of 25. And we have that broken down. We'll get you that information on that. We got it in a nice little.
It's right
Oh,
here.
okay.
Yeah.
Do you work with the,
Did you
like
send
the
it?
Chamber of Commerce? Because that'd be a great resource.
So we work with Central Vermont Chamber. We're working with Central Vermont Economic Development. We are, you know, our goal is to provide the services, not just to students, but to the community. We know that there's businesses out there that need people.
Right.
How can we get the needs met?
Did you say you had 200 students per year or 2,500 students per year?
We average around 2,000 students a year.
2,000
About
students.
200 last year achieved high school credentials.
Okay, that's that type of achievement. Yeah, very, very important.
And
That kind of demographics, very
And these
important.
are, keep in mind, these are the people who dropped out of school, that school was, and they're coming back, and it's hard for them. Some of them are with us 10, 15 years to get to that point. In and out, some, it's just, but they come back and we're here for them.
When they're ready, they're ready.
Have you ever gone into an active school, like a high school, and said, hey, you know, to the graduating class, oh, by the way, you know, or the junior or whatever freshman, say, look, you guys really got to pay attention, because if you don't, then you're going to come through our doors, you know, years later. I mean, you know, just kind of make kind of an impact thing to say, hey, you know, get it right the first time.
They don't know that until they know it though. That's part of it.
You know, part of it, it's hard to go into the schools. We have relationships with all the schools, so that we leave that up to the guidance counselors, not for us to go in and do that. I don't know if the agency of ed would be very happy if we were actually recruiting
Yeah.
directly out of the schools.
No, not recruiting, but preventing.
Preventing.
Yeah.
I think they learned that we're an option. People hear it, they hear it from their friends. You know, you get friends and friends of friends who tend to.
Senator Ashina's question.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. One thing I'm curious about, you know, I think often a lot about people who are leaving prison or state supervision and are trying to make an effort to get back into the workforce. And do you have any involvement with that, with teaching in jails or teaching people who are on furlough, anything like that?
So that's Community High School of Vermont that actually teaches in the prisons. We are in the process of working out a system with them for a more seamless transition. So when they have someone who's leaving the prison system, that we can maybe get to them first, because what happens is very often if there's that break, there's a break, and then we know people don't come back. And parole and probation, I do outreach to parole and probation. We have a lot of people who, at intake, we ask, are you formerly incarcerated? And people at first, they're not always very forthcoming about it. We learn about it later. So the goal is to get people who are coming out of the prison system and have them integrate into our system much more seamlessly. So we're working on those processes now. And part of it is we have to do assessments before someone can get into our system. It's called the Test of Adult Basic Education. And the community high school is looking at actually starting to use the TABE, the Test of Adult Basic Education, as their model also. So then it becomes much more seamless.
We also work with community justice centers as well.
Sean Marie?
So as Brian and Michelle just said, our partners include probation and parole. And as Brian said, most do not like to check the box that they were incarcerated. Bennington used to have a community high school right here in Bennington, and they closed. And we ended up, 3 or 4 years ago, working with those students. And so, as Brian said, there is a plan for the whole network. But the other thing is, senators, we actually go into the schools on every other Monday in Bennington to the Mount Anthony High School. And we ask the guidance counselors if there's anybody at risk of dropping out that they would like us to meet. And so between the guidance counselors and our adult ed program manager, we do catch students that have been extremely truant or who want to drop out.
Senator Weeks.
Yeah, so I had two questions. One, what's your staff size statewide? Like how many folks are we talking about that are not students, but providers?
I think it's about 130 total staff. That includes administrative staff. At CBADE, for instance, we'll serve close to 400 students this year, maybe a little over 400, and we have 10 teachers. Actually, we just pulled in 2, so it's really a little 8.6 teachers for 400 students.
Okay, and then second question, all of your good work, you guys are doing great work. Okay, no two ways about it. Do you do any analysis of why? Besides refugees and the obvious, okay, English as a second language, those are challenges that come with the territory. But for the Vermonters or nearby states, why didn't it happen the first time through? We spent a lot of money and a lot of time on that first pass.
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna speak, COVID was its own reason, right?
Sure.
But in the larger, I've been with Ennikilas for about 23 years. And a lot of times it's because of lack of connection with the school, that they just don't have that one teacher, that one guidance counselor, that one set of eyes that they're connected with. That makes a huge difference. So if they're not feeling connected to the school, that's a big impact. The other thing is
more with men. I remember CCV came in at one point talking to us about men dropping out.
So I've heard it said in a workforce development meeting, the lost boys. They know that there's these young men who dropped out of school, who they're not in the workforce, and what's going to happen with them. Ultimately, we're the only place for them. It's hard because of FERPA. We can't the Privacy Act for schools, that we can't get that information. That's up to the school. The schools have that information, and we hope that they have our information, that they can reach out and provide that. Another really big reason that's often overlooked, it's generational. If a parent doesn't have a high school credential, 70% higher chance that their children will not have one. And we have so many students where I can tell you we've had 3 siblings all three of them have dropped out. Their parents have dropped out. Their grandparents weren't high school graduates. And it's that cycle of, it's these cycles. And I've been sort of like mulling over, is it correlational or causal? Is the low literacy and lack of high school credential, is that just something that happens? Or is it a cause of the poverty and I'm leaning towards it's causal. And we are really making a difference in that. And we're making, we're hopefully stopping that cycle. These are hard cycles to stop. They go back generations and within cultures. And there are families where they say, high school doesn't matter. You don't have to go to school. And we know that. And those are people who were.
Might have been 200 years ago.
Right.
Not true today.
We're gonna have to leave it there. This has been very helpful. If you do have any other information, particularly regarding Senator Weeks's question on national trends, why students go to schools, anything like that, if you would forward that to our committee assistant, and he can distribute, I think that would be really important. But any, New England, Vermont focus would be great. And then also before you leave, would you please share with our committee assistant that one-page document that you had with the numbers on it? If you would leave that a copy with us.
Absolutely.
We could, make a photocopy. I still don't think that's the one that I don't think we have the one that we're looking for.
Okay. I've got
Okay.
a copy of everything here, so.
Yes.
Thank you so much. for your
Yeah.
time.
That's the process question.
Yeah, we're finished. Thank you.
Thank
you. Thank you so much.
And then we're gonna take just a 5-minute break. Go ahead and ask the question.
Okay, so, I understand this is an ask. What's the next step? Like, how does the education committee inform the appropriations of the finance committee that there's a new ask?
So I just added it to our list. We only had 2 in. And then what we'll do in the coming weeks, in the next couple of weeks, is take a look at these. And we'll have a committee discussion and make some kind of formal recommendation to appropriations. And appropriations has a liaison to every committee. Ours is Baruch. If there's somebody who's sitting here right now thinking, hey, I wouldn't mind serving as the committee liaison to Baruch, please, the more hands, the better. And we, thanks so much. And just know that
Oh, Martine's gonna hit.
different committees do it different ways. Some committees, they don't always review the request. It just, when I like to be on the floor, and when an education thing comes up, I don't want everybody looking like they fight it. I just like that we see it, have an opportunity to weigh in, give our thoughts, and they appreciate it as well.
How does this fit into the budget cycle?
So so what we would do is we would make a recommendation to Senator Probst around whether or not we think this increase in the base makes sense, or a piece of it, or whatever we may decide. We have this, we have Governor's Institute, we'll have a few more groups like this coming in to talk to us. They're already sitting down there with, of course, more requests than they can accommodate. So I think that's one of the reasons. If policy committees are willing to weigh in, they're happy to have us weigh in.
So many mouths to feed. I mean, how do we corral all these?
You know what, Bobby Starr was telling me the budget his first year in this building, which must have been, you wrote the biography on Bobby Starr, what is it, 35, 40 years ago? The state budget, they were having a floor fight, big floor fight. One person resigned, 200 million.
200 million.
Over 200 million? Yeah, when they went over 200 million, there was a real floor
When they
fight.
went over 200 million above?
No, just they went over 200, yeah. The whole statewide budget ended up that year being like 205. Yeah.
Shocking.
It is interesting, isn't that interesting? So Bobby, I think that left 35, 40 years ago. It was in the House, and there was this one rep, I think from Montgomery, that said, yeah, we're spending too much, I'm done. And it's a great story. Take us off for a few minutes, and we